My name's Lori Stone. I'm the local state representative for the 28th House District. This is one of the last community conversations in the 28th House District. We have one more next month. And then new boundaries, new districts go into play, and that will look a little different going into January of 2023. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for taking the time to sign in. That'll help us stay in touch. If anyone has questions, we can follow up and we can invite you along to future events. As always, we have selected print materials on everything from
education,
senior services, graduation. These are all provided by the state, so help yourself. If you see something that is helpful for a neighbor, feel free to take something back to them. If you want more, reach out to me and I can make sure those get provided. Our next community conversation will be Saturday, November 19th. It will be our Pints and Politics at Coonan's over there on Mound, north of 13 Mile. It's pretty popular, and if you don't, they do a mean root beer too. I want to take an opportunity to shout out my legislative director, Dawn, who is also a local resident. She works so hard for our community, and I just am so appreciative, so I always want to acknowledge the work that's being done on your behalf. So absolutely. Thank you. I've started out talking about what is a state representative, because people aren't always sure, who do I call, why do I call, what can you help with? I am your state lawmaker. I help create policy, I serve on committees, I cast votes, and I help decide on state budgets and how tax dollars are spent. But I'm also your customer service for the state of Michigan. I provide assistance with departments for state governments like MDHHS, unemployment, insurance agency are probably who we hear from most. But if you're having difficulty navigating a state department, reach out to our office. We are happy to help. And then another piece is legislative updates and information. We get some information from radios, televisions, news articles, social media. But by coming, you get to ask more questions about what's going on, what does that look like, what are the details that are left out of headlines and sound bites. I also do whatever I can to provide communications. So that looks like community conversations. That looks like mailings. We send out a couple mailings a couple times a year on key topics. It looks like town halls and roundtables, attending community events, visiting local businesses and organizations. So I do my best to show up in the community where I can learn and better represent. Election updates. General election is Tuesday, November 8th. It's coming up. Have no doubt that democracy is on the ballot. We have clerks that are locally elected and accountable to our community. They are decentralized. That means every community has their own election process. That means that there's hundreds across the state of Michigan and thousands across the country. And that helps us boost our confidence. We know that we elect people who are from our community. They answer to this community. You won't find me peddling conspiracy theories because I know how elections are run. Heck, I taught it to fourth graders. They're public and transparent and accountable. And that means that you can play a role every step of the way. We have local community members who serve as election poll workers. We also have poll watchers and poll challengers. We have oversight of absentee ballot rooms, and anyone in the public can apply to participate in that process. And hopefully that helps to give you confidence in knowing that our votes are counted, that they're accurate, that there's oversight, that there's auditing that happens, and hopefully that helps make you as confident in the process as it makes me. I have stood up to attacks on your voting rights in Lansing. I've stood up to some really nasty legislation. that calls into question and jeopardizes the integrity, and the desire to substitute other people's opinions for your right to vote. We have representative government, and that's what that means is your voice is your vote. Absentee ballots are out. If you've applied for one, you should have received it in the mail. If you applied for one and you have not received it yet, please reach out to the local clerk's office. They'll make sure that you get that. Some people question the integrity of absentee voting, but our absentee ballots are barcoded in a way that they track from the point you apply for your absentee ballot, when it's sent to your house, when it's received back to it, and when it has been fed into to tally your vote. And so people are worried that everyone's getting ballots and they're stuffing boxes, and there's different conversations around this. It's a very closely regulated process, and know that it's one vote per customer. The other piece is you got to keep in mind, if you requested an absentee vote and you decide, oh, I want to go vote day of, you have to surrender that absentee ballot. They're not just passing them out like, oh, I lost it, I threw it away. You have to be responsible for your ballot. In-person early voting is available 8 hours, usually the Saturday before Election Day. You can check with the local city clerk for what that looks like, where it is, either in Centerline or Warren. For me as an educator, this is about knowing your rights and responsibilities. Elections are job interviews. I take it seriously. Who are you hiring to work for you? Elections are job performance review. How are your local electeds serving you and performing? Elections are an exercise in direct governance. With citizen-led initiatives like the proposals we have on the ballot, you get to pick the rules that we live by in this state. If you, there's 3 separate sections. You need to take the time to vote top to bottom, front and back on the ballot. Some people choose and prefer to vote in person. If you prefer in-person voting, I suggest printing a sample ballot from the Secretary of State's office online so that when you go to the polls, you don't get surprised. I can't tell you how many times you're like, I've heard people talk about the ballots and I wasn't expecting that. And you're in the booth, and now how do you vote? Luckily with cell phones, you can do some research even while you're standing there now, but that wasn't an option even 10 years ago. There's the partisan section of the ballot. Those are party appointed or party elected officials. You can vote on the general election a straight ticket, which is you pick the party and all of those candidates are selected, or you can split a ticket. That means you can vote for some of each party. Take the time. CNG put out their profiles this week. League of Women Voters has an online option. There's lots of different sources you can go and look up and make sure that the people you hire are people who are going to work for you. Even in-person forums are a great opportunity to hear directly from them and see if this is the person you want. We have 3 proposals on the ballot, including term limits and disclosure, voter rights, and making sure some of those rights are put into the state constitution and protected, and then reproductive freedom for all. So look closely at that language and decide what represents you and what you want for our government. We also have several millages on the ballot for Macomb County. We have a veterans millage. This is a continuation. So it is not more. It is continuing to pay what we pay for veteran support services in the county. Not everybody is aware that that's on there. I encourage you to look closely, and our veterans have served us well. We need to make sure we keep taking care of them. We have a special education services on the ballot for the Macomb Intermediate School District, making sure we continue to take care of the kids who have the greatest needs and see that their needs are met. So take a look at that millage. And then the third millage, so we got veterans, special education, transportation. So our smart millage is on the ballot. Take a look at that. Many families in our community depend on public transportation because they don't have transportation or reliable transportation of their own. So those are some of the big things to look forward to. We also have Macomb Community College trustees on the board. So that was something that I was like, oh, I got to go look up those. I'm not as familiar with who served on the board and who are the other prospective candidates. So take the time, look those up. Keep in mind that as elected officials, we have restrictions on some of our mass communication between now and Election Day. So you won't see me posting on Facebook in my professional capacity. You may see personal or non-stateside posts, but it's not because I'm not working, and it's not because I don't care or I've given up stateside work in favor of campaign side work. It's just because they don't want elected incumbents to have a favor over other people. So, but you can always reach out. We're still working via email, via phone, in our office. We are still working for you. If you're looking for information, reach out any of those ways. COVID updates. So I'm part of the Equity Coalition in the community to reduce barriers to access and encourage the use of vaccinations in preventing severe health outcomes like hospitalizations or death. So we know that there are certain communities that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, and we want to make sure that those communities have access to care as well as everyone else. We're at a really good point. I was just listening on NPR, and the CDC said that there are no counties with high rates of transmission in Michigan, which is really good going into fall as we're moving indoors and back together again. There is the new Pfizer and Moderna Omicron boosters approved and available. I got my shot a couple weeks ago, along with my flu shot. Other than being a little achy, it was better than my last round of boosters. So, we want to keep our immunities up in the sense that we don't want severe or serious outcomes. Also, other shots, flu shots, immunizations. It is cold and flu season. We're seeing higher transmission. Kids are back to school. We know our kids are one of those vectors that things get passed easily. So getting flu shots also helps to limit severe outcomes for flu. Our seniors should consider what they have available in shingles and pneumonia shots. Keep you out of the hospital, let you entertain. Yep.
I was going to say I went to the doctor and I didn't realize at 55 I was eligible now for shingles. So I got the flu and shingles, together, and it was fine. But
easy peasy.
I need to, keep up. But yeah, I've had both of my Pfizer shots and also the booster after that.
Good.
So I thank you, God. My son and I have not caught it, and so that's one good thing. It's being vaccinated, definitely.
Yeah. Good. And then some of our kids got off schedule for some of their childhood vaccines, so making sure that they're checking in with their pediatricians and making sure that they have what they need to be safe and healthy. Shingles. And a good point is, like, anyone who had chicken pox growing up has the virus in them for shingles, and stresses on your immune system can bring that back out. And so for our kids who were immunized and maybe never had chicken pox, we'll see if they have the same risk levels for shingles. But anyone who had chicken pox growing up, it's a preventative measure that you can take. And also, looking ahead, we know more than we did 2 years ago. We have preventative measures. Continue taking tests. I just went and picked up my 8 free government-funded tests. I spend so much time in public forums that I test routinely to make sure that I'm not bringing it from one situation into another. It's easy. I said, why don't we have this for flu yet? I want to know if I'm contagious with the flu. I'd stay home and keep other people from getting it. But we have tests. We also know the value of ventilation, being in largely spaced rooms, outside if and when we can. Space matters. And then masks make a difference, If you have a cold, if you have a cough, if you have a sneeze, and you're going out into the public, it's easy to add a mask to the situation. You don't have to wear it everywhere, all day, every time, but it's part of those protections. Legislative updates from Lansing. The legislature last met September 21st and 28th. We passed a $1 billion budget supplemental, which included some tax incentives to keep some of our automotive here, as well as silicon chip development. So chip development is something that we've relied heavily on China for, and it's one of those supply chain things that we need to bring back to the United States. Every electronic device, most of our automotive depends on electronic, and even defense, national defense. And so Michigan has a couple chip makers that we will have in state because we got funding to compete from the CHIP Act to keep that here. Let's see. We still have $6 billion in tax relief available sitting in Lansing, which is a shame that, we've talked about does that look like an earned income tax relief? Does that look like a tax rebate for families? There's a couple different options, but it's kind of been off the table. They're not coming to the table to discuss, and hopefully in the next couple months that we revisit that, because these are taxpayer dollars. It's over and above what we use in our budget.
Wow.
Yeah. And so let's get that back. We haven't had as much work in committees or in session, so that has freed me up to spend more time in district. That looks like attending the Veterans Town Hall this week over at Mangy Post. Yeah, so the federal government, Congress, passed the Pact Act. So if you know a veteran that has served, they need to know that their eligibility for disability and protections under several chemical exposure, which includes burn pits, Agent Orange. They revisited and they reclassified a whole slew. I can't even read off, and it depends on whether you served in operation in Vietnam, if you served in Iraq, if you served in
anywhere.
Pretty much Gulf War. And so if you need information, come see me. I brought some back. I can also connect you with veteran services, help get the word out in the community. There wasn't a huge attendance, and most of us can name at least one person that we know who has served. The veteran services provider said that if you have a health condition, file the claim. Let them worry about eligibility. They'll work out whether you're eligible or not. But at least ask for the services. Are you eligible for? Education priorities. So we continue to work on teacher shortages. We received a Senate hearing on our Kratom Consumer Protection Act. We continue to work with the department on Kratom Consumer Protection. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if you want more information on this, come talk to me after. We're hoping to get it voted out of committee soon in the Senate and hopefully get it voted out before the end of the year. Our Poverty and Homelessness Caucus, I'm the chair of the subcommittee on youth homelessness, and we had a guest speaker for a caucus on the Food Finder app. This is an issue that is near and dear to our community because even for working families in our community, the number one ask is for assistance with food because a paycheck doesn't go as far as it used to. And this Food Finder app has all the pantries and access and availability at online and via an app that you can add to your phone. And then you can decide, where one. We don't want anyone going hungry in a country that has so much. We don't want anyone worrying about their nutrition. It's available. We're also working on making sure paychecks, or one job is enough. One job's enough. We know too many people working 2-3 jobs trying to scrape by. One job should be enough to cover your needs, and cover the basics. So we were very thrilled to have Jack Griffin, who is originator. He's a graduate of U of M's business school, and it's a great initiative that he just saw as kids going hungry in summers. We have a lot of kids that depend on our local schools for breakfast and lunch, and families that know that a hot meal is, their kids are going to get a hot meal at least 5 days a week. And so he saw the opportunity to make sure parents have at their fingertips the availability to make sure none of our kids go hungry. And that's true for everyone in our community. The governor has appointed a parent advisory council. We know parent involvement is essential for student success. And having parent voices to weigh in on the impacts of policy before she signs them in law is so essential. We had a decision on abortion rights and access. The Supreme Court provided an injunction in Michigan to make sure that abortion is still legal and accessible. But we know that these decisions will be decided on your ballot with Prop 3. So you have to wait in there. It's by no ends going to be the end, but it is going to put into the Constitution basics if that's what's selected. Auto insurance reform, appellate court ruling. So we know that when auto insurance reform was passed into law in May of 2019, that it was applied retroactively to critical survivors of car accidents before May 2019. Now, most law is applicable going forward. So this law was challenged, and they said it was wrong that this is being enforced looking backwards, and the appellate court upheld that. Now, that could be appealed to the Supreme Court, so we have to wait and watch. But if you know someone who is a catastrophic car accident survivor, they should be receiving those services at the same rates that they were before. And we know that this is impacting our care providers, and that we don't want to lose them in our community. So we need to make sure the people that are entitled to those benefits are using them. Economic investment in Michigan. We were talking about the semiconductors, the electrification. Those are all things that we have to fight for. At one time, we were Motor City. Michigan put the world on wheels, and have no doubt that other states are trying to steal away those industries that have been supporting our families with good paying jobs. And some states are saying, you don't have to pay union wages in our communities. But we want to make sure that we're competitive. We want to make sure that that we are fighting to keep those jobs and attracting jobs to our state. Appointments for councils. I don't see as many people from Warren or Centerline applying for state appointments. The executive office, the government has councils that get to weigh in on legislation. They get to help direct and guide where policies are going, where there are policy shortfalls. And one way to do that is to add your voice. Now, there are professional appointments where, depending on your background, your experience, you can apply to be on one of these councils. They try to look for geographic representation, diversity of voices, so that they're considering all the perspectives when they consider policy. But one of the voices that is important is general public voices. Most councils include at least some citizen participation. And these are not professionals. These are maybe customers or users of the services. So let's take Michigan's Board of Chiropractic. They have 3 general public seats. So if you use a chiropractor, then maybe you want to sit on a council and kind of weigh in on your concerns, your experience, those kind of things. There's 3 seats on the Occupational Therapy Board. Osteopathic medicine and surgery, there's 1. You don't have to be a surgeon, but if you've had surgery, if you've had bone-related surgery or a bone-related condition and you depend on these services, it's an opportunity to add your voice and your experience. Professional surveyors, professional engineers, the Board of Nursing Home Administrators. We had a lot of contacts from the community about nursing home conditions during COVID. Wouldn't that be a great thing to have your voice added to a board? The Board of Optometry, the Board of Pharmacy, real estate appraisers, podiatric medicine and surgery, someone who has foot issues, it's important. The Elevator Safety Board, the Electrical Administrative Board, Board of Barber Examiners, the Remuneration Committee. We have a board for everything, Wesley. It's true. We have potatoes and corn and milk, and those are important. Psychology, respiratory care, speech and language pathology, and physician's assistants are some of the openings that we have. If those sound like something you're interested in, if you have someone in your family who utilizes these services and they would be interested in knowing more about the process, reach out to our office. There's applications online. They submit why they're interested, and we can also put in an ask on your behalf for, this would be a good voice to add to your council. Let me tell you why. And it is important that it's not just professionals that weigh in, it's utilizers of the system, so that you have a say into, is it user-friendly, or are there lots of barriers to getting access? So that's one that we haven't shouted out a whole lot, but it is something that I am working on, is making sure more of our local voices are represented on those councils.
Thank you.
Hunter's holiday is coming up any minute now. And if you are a hunter, or if you have hunters in the family, you need to let them know that DNR has switched to online deer harvest reporting. So when they take their tag, that they need to go online. They can do it via their phone. They can take their laptop up with them. They can hit a local library, but they have 72 hours, 3 days from the time they take their deer to report their harvest. So before, you had to go into a DNR location, you had to call in, and to free up their staff, the online reporting has proven. It's been piloted, and now they've decided that this is the most efficient use of their services. There's a mobile app. It's a faster option. You can get it through the Android store or the Apple App Store. Hunters who might not be able to directly report their harvest could call home. Let's say you're out in the middle of nowhere and you can't figure out how to get a signal. You're up in a deer blind. Well, if you got your tag, you're probably done. But you're up at deer camp. You could call home and have a family member. You relay the information. They say it takes about 5 minutes to report a harvest. So it should be quick. It should be easy. But make sure that they're doing it. You want to be in compliance. What do we got? Local things, local happenings. So I'm an active part of the Warren Centerline Prevention Coalition. October 23rd through 31st is the Red Ribbon Week. This is an event to raise awareness on substance use disorder, prevention, and treatment. Tuesday, October 24th, our local coalition will be hosting an interfaith memorial for those who are lost to COVID and struggling with substance use disorder. It will also be a celebration of sobriety and healthy choices, and another opportunity to connect with prevention and education. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's important to familiarize yourself with indicators, have conversations with people who are in relationships, especially our young people, about what a healthy relationship looks like, as well as what problematic indicators can be. And then more importantly, know the resources and shelters in our community that can help people get out of potentially life-threatening situations. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Self-checks and preventative screenings like mammograms save lives. And I'm going to put an appeal out there for better technology for mammograms, because if men's cancers were detected like women's cancers, well, men can also have breast cancer. I will put that in there. We would have better technology. I'm just saying. Halloween, October is tied to Halloween. Centerline's Halloween Town will be taking place this weekend with trick-or-treating, haunted houses, and lots of activities locally. Stop in and talk to Wesley Ann if you need more details before you leave. Warren's Harvest Fest will take place on Thursday at the community center and includes trunk or treat and much, much more. Enjoy the fabulous lawn displays. Be safe. Keep a lookout for goblins and ghouls. And then some local community happenings. Warren Civic Theater will be performing Clue on stage the next 2 weekends. So get your tickets. It promises to be a good performance. And Warren Symphony Orchestra is kicking off their season November 13th. At Macomb Community Performing Arts Center, and veterans will be honored with a free ticket. There's more information up here if you'd like it. Come help support. Our November community conversation is Saturday, November 19th, 11 a.m. for Pints and Politics at Coonan's, my treat. Like I said, also root beer available if it's too early for a beer. And I think that summarizes everything I've got on my agenda, and so I'm going to open it up to question and answers. What is on your minds? If there's anything that you want me to dig into more and go back to on the agenda, this is a good opportunity. Wes?
I want to add something on the breast cancer thing. I just
Yes.
saw it on TV. One of the hospitals, I don't remember which one, for women that have dense breast
tissue,
whatever that is, they have a new machine that they lay on the table and gravity and all this, but it's much
I've heard of
better
it.
at diagnosing that than the former ones. I don't remember which hospital.
I'm going to have to do some more research on that.
That was
But-
on one of the local news. Anybody else see that?
No, because I've always been going to South Macomb there.
Okay.
It's old school, so I'd like to be updated, being it so, you know, runs my family quite a bit. So
Gotcha.
I would like to
Prevention
go to a
is
better-
key.
Yeah, I'd like to go to a better hospital.
And also let people know that there are programs out there that if they are uninsured or underinsured, that they can all help offset the cost of a mammogram. We don't want people not getting it because insurance is a barrier.